Welcome to my talk, entitled, Still Alive? You've Discovered the Meaning of Life. I'm Andrew Chapman, and in this talk, I'll explain to you what is at once the most important thing and the most obvious thing in your life, and that's what the meaning of your life is. This talk has two parts. In the first part, I'll show you what you already know, that is, what the meaning of life is. In the second part, I'll tell you how charlatans, quacks, mountebanks, flimflammers, snake oil salesmen, and sinister people of all guises have turned the term meaning into literal nonsense to attempt to steal your life from you. Part 1, in which I show you what you already know, what the meaning of life is. This question about the meaning of life has struck so many people as so broad as to be absurd. People make fun of this when they talk about how philosophers behave, how theologians or the deeply religious act. Here's just one famous example of poking fun at the question of the meaning of life.
Many millions of years ago, a race of hyper-intelligent, pan-dimensional beings got so fed up with the constant bickering about the meaning of life that they commissioned two of their brightest and best to design and build a stupendous supercomputer to calculate the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
Oh, deep thought. We want you to tell us the answer.
The answer to what?
The answer to life, the universe, everything. We'd really like an answer. Something simple.
I have to think about that. Return to this place in exactly 7.5 million years.
Is it finished? No, there's more. There's more.
They go back.
What, 7.5 million years later?
That's right. They do.
Deep thought. Do you have
An answer for you? Yes, but you're not going to like it.
It doesn't matter. We must know it.
All right. The answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything is 42.
42?
Yes, I thought it over quite thoroughly. It is, it's 42. It would have been simpler, of course, to have known what the actual question was.
But it was the question. The ultimate question. Of everything.
That's not a question. Only when you know the question will you know what the answer means.
Give us the ultimate question then.
I can't. But there is one who can. A computer that will calculate the ultimate question. A computer of such infinite complexity that life itself will form part of its operational matrix. And you yourselves shall take on new, more primitive forms and go down into the computer to navigate its 10 million year program. I shall design this computer for you, and it shall be called...
That, of course, is from the recent movie version of Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. That picture of how ridiculous the meaning of life question is has permeated our culture so much that if you go to Google and type in what is the answer to the ultimate question of life, the universe, and everything, it returns to you 42. One of the problems that's gone on here and that Adams is poking fun at is that in order to ask the question of what the meaning of life is, and even further, in order to understand any potential answer to the question, we would need to know what was necessary for meaning. Here are two things that will guide the rest of my discussion here, two things that are necessary for something to be the meaning of a life. One, we have to have at least some idea of what we're looking for when we go out looking for the thing that might be the meaning of life. And second, we have to have at least some idea of what to do with the thing when we get it. If it is actually the meaning of life, it can't be mysterious what the thing is when we end up getting it. So why do so many people think that this question of the meaning of life is mysterious or unanswerable or absurd? Here's my diagnosis. Generally, when people talk about the meaning of life, one, they have no idea of the sort of thing they're looking for. They think they know what they're talking about. They think they know what it might look like if they got the meaning of life, but they really have no idea. Second, they have no idea of what to do with the supposed meaning of life if they actually got it. Now, as I always tell my students, don't bury the thesis too far into your paper, and I won't bury the thesis of this talk too deep into the talk. So here is the thesis of the talk. Here is the most important thing, and simultaneously the most obvious thing in all of our lives. It's something that you all already know. The meaning of life is the process whereby you give a damn about your life and you make your life something to give a damn about. And if that just sounds so obvious, yes, it is. You already know this. I'm not teaching you anything. So what do we mean when we ask this question about the meaning of life? Getting clear on that will help us get clear on why the answer I'm telling you you already know is actually the meaning. Sometimes when people are talking about the meaning of life, what they mean is what is the purpose of life? Sometimes they mean what's the reason for life? Sometimes they mean what's the justification of life? And sometimes they mean what's the value of life? In the remainder of the first part of this talk, I'll focus just on questions 3 and 4, and you'll see that once questions 3 and 4 have been adequately addressed, questions 1 and 2 either no longer make sense or they disappear entirely. Since we're talking about the meaning of life, it's important to get clear on the object of our study, which is life itself. Now, life has a number of different definitions, and when we are talking about life, in the particular context that we're talking about it here, what we're talking about isn't a biological thing, but instead it's a felt thing, a lived thing. Sit still for just one moment and take in everything that's going on around you. What you feel, what you see, what you hear, all of these things are components of your life. Thus, life is both the object of study and the subject that studies that object. This makes the question of the meaning of life an odd question in some ways, in that in no other case, when we're talking about something that we're investigating, are we using the thing that we're investigating in order to do that very investigation itself. It'll help us to keep in mind that we are lives that are investigating life. I've claimed that giving a damn is what you already know the meaning of life is. So what do I mean by this? Well, giving a damn is something that's necessary to life, meaning that in order to live, You have to give a damn about living. And by giving a damn about living, you show yourself that living is worth giving a damn about. If you're still alive, that means you somehow managed every day to continue to breathe, to continue to get food and get it around your mouth area, to not walk in front of cars. This means that you care enough about being alive to continue being alive. But if you care, that means you've estimated that it's worth caring about to continue being alive. That's the dual sense of giving a damn that I'm talking about here. This is a sort of valuing. So it'll be important for us to understand what it is for something to have value and where value comes from. Let's first talk about something that we all know has at least some value. This piece of paper with George Washington on it, a dollar bill. What is it that gives a dollar bill value? It's not just that it was printed by the federal government. It's that you and I value it. So when we show up on the scene and we look at a dollar bill and we take it to be valuable, it becomes valuable. That pulsing there is getting value. If everybody stopped caring about dollar bills, if nobody valued them anymore, they wouldn't have any value at all. There's nothing you could do if nobody valued a dollar bill to give it value, apart from valuing it. So when it comes to us, things like you and me, where does our value come from? It comes from the exact same sort of place. I value a dollar bill, the dollar bill becomes valuable. When we're talking about me, if I value not something outside of myself, but myself, then I, myself, become valuable. This is what I mean by giving a damn about your life and thereby making your life the sort of thing that's worthy of being given a damn about. This picture of value creation looks like this. To be valuable is just to be valued. When we value our own lives, we make them valuable. Making our lives valuable shows that they are worth valuing. If I value my life and someone asks, "Is your life worth valuing?" the answer is yes, because I am valuing it. That's how lives become valuable to begin with. It's not as though my life is something outside of me that I can ask that question about. Insofar as I value myself even enough to ask myself whether I'm worth valuing, I already value myself in such a way that I've given myself value. This concept shows up across the history of philosophy in a number of different guises. Let's just look at a few of them. In Kant's philosophy, this is called autonomous self-legislation. That's typical Kantian, very big wordism. According to Kant, legislation is about setting standards and enforcing those standards. You and I are the ones that set standards for ourselves, and we're the only ones who can hold ourselves responsible for meeting those standards. So you and I are both the legislature and the police in terms of the things that we do. That doesn't mean that we can make things right or wrong, good or bad. It does mean that we're the only ones who can tell ourselves what to care about. Nobody else could without our consent. And similarly, nobody else can hold us responsible for caring about the things that we've claimed we care about. This is legislation in the same way as giving a damn is self-valuing. In Nietzsche's philosophy, this is the will to power. Power has a number of different denotations and connotations. For Nietzsche, power is the expression of a thing's essence or nature. Now, I swear to you, there have been a number of people who have seriously misunderstood Nietzsche's philosophy. Power has nothing to do with trampling weak people. Nothing at all to do with it. Don't let the misunderstandings of the Nazi Party influence your understanding of Nietzsche, who was absolutely not himself anything like the Nazis. While the essence or nature of, for example, a plant is automatically expressed by that plant, you and I have to will the expression of our essence. Willing is trying. Now, it's not as though you and I could fail to will our own essence. Every choice that we make is an expression of our essence. So, while a plant flourishes by growing taller and spreading its leaves wider and opening up its petals, you and I flourish by continuing to choose and to move forward in life. We do this to ourselves. So you can see the same picture in Nietzsche as was there in Kant and as is there in my picture of giving a damn. This also shows up in Heidegger's philosophy in terms of the concept of care. Care is the essence of our being, according to Heidegger. Our choices express this essence, because to choose is just to be the sort of thing that can care. Thus, caring is essential to our very being. I capitalize being there because this is a very important concept for Heidegger, and it gets capitalized just like that in translations of Heidegger. To care is just to take one path to be more worthy than some other path and to set oneself on that path. This doesn't mean that we rationally deliberate. This happens before rational deliberation. This is what drives us to rational deliberation. So you can notice that caring is something that we do when we take ourselves to be the sorts of things that need to be propelled forward. You can see this same picture in Nietzsche, in Kant, and in what I'm calling giving a damn. Finally, a contemporary example, what Christine Korsgaard calls self-constitution. This is somewhat of a long quotation, but it's so good that I want to reproduce it fully and read it to you. This is the first 2 paragraphs of her book, Self-Constitution. Human beings are condemned to choice and action. Maybe you think you can avoid it by resolutely standing still, refusing to act, refusing to move, but it's no use, for that will be something you have chosen to do, and then you will have acted after all. Choosing not to act makes not acting a kind of action, makes it something that you do. This is not to say that you cannot fail to act. Of course you can. You can fall asleep at the wheel, you can faint dead away, you can be paralyzed with terror, you can be helpless with pain, or grief can turn you into stone. And then you will fail to act. But you cannot undertake to be in those conditions. So long as you're in charge, so long as nothing happens to derail you, you must act. You have no choice but to choose and to act on your choice. You require of yourself that you do this. This is just what we saw in Heidegger, in Nietzsche, in Kant, and in my picture of giving a damn. So before we end this section of the talk, I want to remind you of what you already know. The meaning of life is the process whereby you give a damn about your life and you make your life something worth giving a damn about. And again, you already know this. This is why you're listening to this talk to begin with. It's how you manage to get this far. You promote the meaning of your life when you throw yourself forward to the next moment. And you do that by giving a damn. Part 2, in which I tell you how charlatans, quacks, mountebanks, flimflammers, and snake oil salesmen have turned the term meaning into literal nonsense to attempt to steal your life from you. I don't think I'm being hyperbolic here. In fact, I think I'm being somewhat understated. So many people think that they can tell you that your life isn't meaningful, that they have it, and that they're going to give it to you. Almost always it involves joining their club, paying them money, participating in their proprietary little activity. If I'm right, then what they're doing is attempting to derail you, to show you that what they're doing is actually better than what you're doing, and that's all false. In order to see how people do this, we need to remind ourselves of what's necessary for meaning, because in all of these cases, people are trying to sell you something that does not meet these two criteria. One, we have to have at least some idea of the sort of thing that we're looking for when we're searching for meaning. And two, we have to at least have some idea of what to do with meaning when we get it. And recall my diagnosis of what's gone wrong with flimflammers is that when they talk about the meaning of life, they have no idea of the sort of thing that they're actually looking for, and they have no idea of what to do when they get it. There's a general pattern that all of these attempts to steal your meaning of life from you fall into, and I call it the meaning of life flimflam. It has 5 steps with some intermediary steps. Here's how it looks. Step 1. Find yourself someone who you really want to have join your club. Step 2. Tell that person that the most important question ever is only answerable in some very specific way. Intermediary step 2.5. Unbeknownst to that person, and maybe even unbeknownst to you, since you have no idea what you're looking for to begin with, that very specific way of answering the question is incoherent. Step 3. Tell that person that joining your special club is the only way to answer the most important question ever in the required, very specific way. Intermediary step 3.5. Refuse to actually explain how joining your club is the only way to answer the most important question ever in the required, very specific way. Step 4. As a show of mock good faith, of course, encourage that person, if they doubt you, to go look for some other answer to the most important question ever. And, of course, they're never going to find one, since you've set things up such that the question being asked is incoherent to begin with. Finally, step 5, your club now has a new member who will defend your club because, of course, they have no idea what's going on to begin with, and you probably don't either. When you set up the answer to the question of the meaning of life such that the only things that could possibly answer it are themselves incoherent, meaningless, make no sense, then your entire project falls into incoherence. This is why so many people think that the question of the meaning of life is absurd, because the people who talk loudest have made it absurd. But don't worry. You already know what the meaning of life is. So it's easy enough to avoid, to guard against the meaning of life flimflam. Always ask how some proposed solution to the question of the meaning of life is actually supposed to be a solution. This sounds almost too obvious, but we've let people for too long get away with claiming that something is a solution, selling us nothing, and then we buy it. Asking how some proposed solution is actually supposed to be a solution involves asking, what would a solution to this problem actually look like? Why is that what a solution would actually look like? And finally, how does this proposed solution meet those demands? If someone's selling you a proposed solution to the answer of what the meaning of life is, they should be able to tell you what they're talking about and how what they're selling you meets their very own criteria. Let's look at 4 very famous versions of this flimflam. They all instantiate the same pattern. They're all exactly the same thing, just in 4 different guises. One version of the flimflam is claiming that the meaning of life is never dying. A second version is claiming that the meaning of life is finding something called ultimate justification. A third version is claiming that the meaning of life is metaphysically external to the thing that we're looking to find meaning for, life. And fourth, the meaning of life is some particular project or other. Let's look at each one of these in turn. First, never dying. It's been claimed that if we die, our lives were meaningless even when we were alive. Thus, never dying makes our lives meaningful. Now recall what you ask when somebody tries to sell you something like this. How is never dying actually supposed to be a solution to the question of the meaning of life? It isn't. Because what's going on behind the scenes in this purported solution is a misunderstanding of value. Value or importance doesn't work this way. If, for example, I destroy a valuable artwork, maybe now the artwork doesn't have any value, but that doesn't mean that before I destroyed it, it didn't have any value. Similarly, if you die, after you die, your life doesn't have any value, which of course is no surprise since you are dead. But before you died, why can't your life have had value then? And we don't just think this way with respect to artworks. Think about, for example, a pet that you have or that you have had. When your pet dies, nobody says, well, I guess since the pet wasn't immortal, that means that none of the activities in that pet's life were meaningful. That pet just had a meaningless life. But even further, notice how this answer is incoherent. If a temporally finite thing, your life when you die, is meaningless, then a temporally infinite amount of that temporally finite thing is also meaningless. If I have 10 amounts of meaninglessness and we just infinitely multiply them, meaning doesn't just shoot up out of nowhere. We just have more meaninglessness now. Claiming that never dying somehow gives our lives meaning is false and a flimflam. Let's look at the second version of this flimflam. The claim that ultimate justification, something called that, is somehow supposed to give our lives meaning. The claim is that ultimate justification is what is meaningful. And ultimate justification, that's not just an justification that we have in our lives to do this or that. This is an ultimate, a final, a complete justification. That would be a final answer to any and all possible why questions such that no further why question could be asked. And when somebody tries to sell you something like this, you ask, how is this supposed to be a solution to the question of the meaning of life? To notice how absurd the claim that ultimate justification is the meaning of life actually is, let's watch a short clip in which we're presented with a child who won't stop asking why. Let's see where that leads to.
Or like when you see a parent that seems to be negligent, like you see a parent in McDonald's with the kid and the parent's like, I can't take this shit anymore, and just like collapsed and all the shopping bags are just strewn everywhere. And the kid's happy, the kid's eating French fries. And the kid asks a question like, Mama, why is the sky blue? And she's like, just shut up and eat your French fries. And you think, what a terrible mother. Why doesn't she answer her child? When I have a child, I will answer all of their questions and open their minds to the wonders of the world. Well, guess what? You don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You can't answer a kid's question. They don't accept any answer. A kid never goes, oh, thanks, I get it. They fucking never say that. They just keep coming, more questions. Why? Till you don't even know who the fuck you are anymore at the end of the conversation. It's an insane deconstruction. It's amazing. This is my daughter the other day. She's like, Papa, why can't we go outside? Well, because it's raining. Why? Well, water's coming out of the sky. Why? Because it was in a cloud. Why? Well, clouds form when there's vapor. Why? I don't know. I don't know any more things. Those are all the things I know. Why? Because I'm stupid, okay? I'm stupid. Why? Well, because I didn't pay attention in school, okay? I went to school, but I didn't listen in class. Why? Because I was high all the time. I smoked too much pot. Why? Because my parents gave me no guidance. They didn't give a shit. Why? Because they fucked in a car and had me, and they resented me for taking their youth. Why? Because they had bad morals. They just had no compass. Why? Because they had shitty parents. It just keeps going like that. Why? Because fuck it, we're alone in the universe. Nobody gives a shit about us. I'm going to stop here to be polite to you for a second. But this goes on for hours and hours, and it gets so weird and abstract at the end. It's like, why? Well, because some things are and some things are not. Why? Well, because things that are not can't be. Why? Because then nothing wouldn't be. You can't have fucking nothing isn't. Everything is. Why? Because if nothing wasn't, there'd be fucking all kinds of shit that we don't like, giant ants with top hats dancing around. There's no room for all that shit. Why? I'll fuck you, eat your French fries, you little shit, god damn it.
So notice what's gone wrong here. It isn't that why questions on their own are incoherent. It's that claiming that there's a place that why questioning could ever end is incoherent. And there's a simple and structural reason for this. Whatever this thing is, an ultimate justification, would need to be able to explain all things and all facts. Thus, such a justification, if it were actually ultimate, would need to be outside of everything that could possibly be questioned. It needs to be able to justify that stuff. However, notice what we're claiming here. If there's something outside of all the stuff that can be questioned, all the stuff that can be questioned is everything. The ultimate justification would need to be something that's outside of everything. But there isn't anything that's outside of everything. That doesn't even make sense. No such justification is possible because the concept of ultimate justification is incoherent. Even the picture that some theists have given, where God is metaphysically external to creation, doesn't solve this, because of course we can still ask, why is God the way that God is? And the standard answer that God's nature explains God isn't going to do it for us here, because we can still ask, why is it the case that God's nature explains God? Insofar as somebody's making a factual claim or purporting to make a factual claim, we can ask why. And since it can never possibly end except in incoherence, there can't possibly be such a thing as ultimate justification. Ultimate justification is a flimflam. Let's look at the third flimflam. Find yourself something that's metaphysically external to you, whatever that means, and you've found yourself the meaning of life. God, heaven, nature have all been claimed to be ultimately meaningful, and it's our relationship to those things that makes our lives meaningful. Whenever somebody tries to sell you something like this, you ask, how is this supposed to be a solution to the question of the meaning of life? How is this supposed to be a solution? Notice what the claim is here. Meaning is actually outside of you. Meaning, your life isn't meaningful. Your life is related to what's meaningful. Now, how exactly is claiming that your life is meaningless and that the only meaningful thing is metaphysically separate from you supposed to make your life meaningful? If someone says, oh, it's the relationship that your meaningless life stands in to that thing, you ask how. Because the way that this has been set up, it looks like your life is essentially meaningless. Meaning is necessarily and metaphysically outside of you. Sounds like we're going in the wrong direction here. Claims of metaphysical externality are a flimflam. Finally, it's been claimed that some particular project, take your choice, is the thing that is ultimately meaningful or gives lives meaning. Religion, marriage, child-rearing, charity, friendships, art, sports, motorcycle maintenance have all been claimed to be the thing that's meaningful. And when somebody tries to sell you something like this, you ask, how is this supposed to be a solution to the question of the meaning of life? How is it? Now, it's no doubt that some people find meaning in the participation in certain projects. Now, it's that participation itself and not the project that's meaningful. Notice that there's a mistake that's gone on here. I, for example, have just started getting plants in my house. I didn't used to be a houseplant owner, and now I'm a houseplant owner, and I find meaning in being a houseplant owner. I think it's pretty neat. But it's not the houseplants that are meaningful. It's my relation to the houseplants in terms of my being a houseplant owner that is meaningful. And we can see that because one and the same project, some people find meaningful and many other people find meaningless. But if, for example, religion, some particular religion, motorcycle maintenance, whatever, is actually the meaningful thing, then getting involved with it should make your life meaningful. But it just doesn't work that way. What's actually gone on when you participate in some project and you find that meaningful is that you're giving a damn about your life by giving a damn about the project. And in so doing, you've made your life something worth giving a damn about. Claiming that any particular project is the meaning of life is a flimflam. In conclusion, I want to remind you of what you already know. And I sincerely mean this. You already know this. I'm just reminding you. I'm just clearing away the debris so you can see what's right in front of you. The meaning of life is the process whereby you give a damn about your life and you make your life something that's worth giving a damn about. Don't let snake oil salesmen, flimflammers, mountebanks sell you anything other than your life, which already belongs to you. Thank you.